أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dear listeners, today we shall discuss quadratic polynomial. As you might have gone through different types of polynomials, there is one type of polynomial that is known as quadratic polynomial. Now the question is, which polynomial is known as quadratic polynomial? For that, you must remember that that polynomial having highest degree 2 is known as quadratic polynomial. That polynomial having highest degree 2 is known as quadratic polynomial. So let me write down some quadratic polynomials to make your concept clear about quadratic polynomials. It is x square minus 3x minus 10 equal to 0. So when we see this is first term, this is second term 3x, and this is third term minus 10. So here this x contains power 1 and this x contains power 2. So the highest power is second degree power. Highest power is 2. So we call this equation is quadratic equation. As I have put sign of equality here, it makes this quadratic equation. Without sign of equality, we call it quadratic polynomial, and with this sign of equality, there exists now two sides. This is LHS and this is right hand side RHS. So at this time we have to call it quadratic equation. Generally it has three terms. This is first term, this is second term, and this is third term. Its general form is ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0. This is general form of quadratic equation. General form of quadratic equation. This is ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0. So here we have to understand some points regarding quadratic equation. Point number 1 is, if this c is equal to 0, if the last term, constant term c is equal to 0, what shall happen to our quadratic equation? It will remain like this: ax square plus bx equal to 0. So remember, it is still quadratic equation. So when c is equal to 0, our equation still remains quadratic equation without having the last term c. Case second, if b is equal to 0, so when b is equal to 0, it means this second term will not be there, because now x will also not be there. So whole second term will be missing. Our equation will be like this: ax square plus c equal to 0. Remember, it is still quadratic equation. The reason behind it is that quadratic equation should have highest power 2, as we read it earlier. In first case, our highest power 2 remains here without having the third term c, and in here second case, highest power 2 exists here without having second term bx. That's why in first case and in second case, if there are only two terms, still we say this is quadratic equation. Now third case. Third case is if this a is equal to 0. A equal to 0. What shall happen to the equation? So first term is not there now. So equation will remain like this: bx plus c equal to 0. Now this is not quadratic equation. Reason is, now the highest power is 1. Here is variable x. We have to check its power, and its power is 1. So we say highest power of this equation is 1. When there is highest power 1, this is not quadratic equation. So we say this is we can call it this linear equation, because when highest power is 1, our equation is linear, not quadratic. So by this description, you might have got it that in quadratic equation, c can be equal to 0, b can be equal to 0, but a can never be equal to 0. A can never be equal to 0 in quadratic equation. Now remember one thing more, that these quadratic equations deal with plane figures. Plane figures. Plane figures like square, like rectangle, etc. Because plane figures have always two dimensions, length and breadth. That's why quadratic equation also deals with these plane figures, and it has always only two roots, or we say two zeros. Two roots, or we can say two zeros. So remember, quadratic equation have always two zeros or two roots, because it deals with plane figures. Now whenever we solve a quadratic equation, at that time we find two of its zeros, and we have three methods for solving a quadratic equation. Method number 1 is splitting middle term. This is first method by which we can solve a quadratic equation, and second method is quadratic formula. And third method is completing the square. These are the three methods by which we can solve a quadratic equation. Inshallah, in next class we shall discuss these three methods one by one. Thank you for listening to this class.